Coming up on episode 256 of Wheel Bearings, we've got a long one to make up for missing last week. We've got the Ford Mustang Mach-E GT, the 2023 Nissan Z, the Mercedes-Benz EQB and EQXX, the AMG GLB 35, the new Blazer EV, Scott Keogh moves to Scout, the Toyota Crown, charging failures, and Ford adopting LFP batteries, and a bunch of listener questions. All that and more coming up next. Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. This is episode 256 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam McBool-Salmon from Guidehouse Insights.
I am Nicole Wakeland from the Fast Women podcast.
And I am Roberto Baldwin from, let's say, TechCrunch this week.
All right. And we took a week off last week while I was getting recharged out in California. Not that far from where Robbie lives, by the way, but had a wonderful vacation. And we'll talk a little bit more about what I was driving out there a little later on. But Nicole, what about you?
Oh.
What were you driving in the time since we last spoke?
In the interim, so the one I'm going to talk about that I was driving was the 2022 Mercedes-Benz AMG GLB 35 4MATIC. That doesn't even sound like a car. It sounds like a spaceship.
Sounds like the model name for some Sony headphones.
Right. Yeah.
It's a math problem.
Does that come with noise canceling? Yeah. So
It's a
I
math
had
problem for sophomores.
So no more Altima this week?
No,
yeah, I was hoping it was the Altima.
No, the Altima, as much as I love the Altima, it has finally gone to the next human. So no, I do not have the Altima. So I had a Mercedes-Benz. I like the Mercedes. I mean, what I like about Mercedes is they consistently have this interior that feels like fancy and upscale, but has a little bit of elegance to it. You know, they keep a lot of tech in there. Some of them just get fancy for the sake of getting all kinds of flashy and crazy. Mercedes does it in a sort of reserved, it's nice, it's lovely, but it's not out of control. So I appreciate how they do it. So this is a $58,000 SUV. It's got...
No, wait, the GLB is the little one, right?
It's the bebe.
Okay.
It's the little one. So you've got it, but you have a decent amount of space. It's not so little that you feel like it's too small. It's rather upright in how it's designed. I know it's an SUV, but it's fairly
It's comfy inside. Yeah, it's like the boxy ones, and there's like room for everybody.
Yeah,
it's smaller than the other ones.
Smaller, so it's like smaller, and you're like, oh no, this is the small one. But like Robbie, I think even you could sit in the back of this, and you probably wouldn't be like hunched over, like
it's
you know,
smartly proportioned for its size.
Ooh, what a good description! Smartly. It's smartly proportioned.
Use that, kids.
Takes notes, smartly proportioned. Okay, so I did enjoy driving this. It was roomy. We had 4 adults in there, plenty of room for everybody to fit, no issues with headroom or legroom. There's a decent little amount of cargo room. And because this is the AMG, it has plenty of power. It's got 302 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque. So it moves. You push the gas and it moves. And it does feel aggressive, and it has nice, crisp handling. Because of that whole AMG Mercedes situation, it's not just an SUV with lots of power that gets away from you and feels unwieldy and sloppy on the highway. You get on the highway and it has the Mercedes sedan kind of vibe where it's very controlled, steering is tight, it's very crisp. You don't have a lot of nosedive if you hit the brakes hard. It's a nice vehicle to drive, but it's not like an overly in-your-face aggressive SUV. It's like a happy medium on size, happy medium on power. Inside, it's beautiful. It has like Napa leather and heated seats. And there's, on the one I have, I think the base screen size is only like 7 inches. I might have that wrong, but this one, it's a 10.25 infotainment touchscreen. And the only thing, and it still freaks me out, and a lot of Mercedes have these, on the steering wheel, there's a tiny little square on each side that's a touchpad. I mean, it's not even the size. It's like half the size of your pinky nail. It's this teeny tiny little square, which is kind of nice if you want to swipe through things, but also your hands go there. So accidentally you just move your hand and you're like, I've changed the channel. I'm listening to gospel. What has happened? How did I do this? Like it's very easy to accidentally hit those. So I feel like it's a great idea, but somehow they're just in a position where I just move my hand off the steering wheel and on again. And I've managed to brush it ever so slightly, and I have changed things. So it feels like it's a good idea, but I'm not. Have either of you experienced this in a Mercedes, a little teen touchpads?
It's
I
been
hit
a long
all the
time.
buttons with my hands because 9 and 3, which is, and of course every steering wheel, you know, the little bars come out 9 and 3, and then my hands are this big,
Yeah.
so they're large. So I'm always hitting buttons and things while I'm turning. I'm just like anything that's really close to the edge, I hit. So I like how I purposely am very like
Try to
So
keep your hands
I don't
off.
hit the Mercedes-Benz one very much, but yeah, like if you don't remember which one does which, like the left side's for the cluster and the right side's for the infotainment system.
Right.
So you'll hit it, you're like, oh, I need to change something. Oh, something popped up on the cluster, and you hit the right one, and all of a sudden something's going on in the infotainment screen. Like, hey,
Yes.
what happened here?
I kept doing the infotainment screen was apparently I moved my right hand far too much when I'm driving because I was constantly like new channel volume. What am I doing? Like it was constantly changing. So I had issues with that. But I mean, it's just like I'm sure once I got used to it, it does feel like one of those things once you get the hang of it, not to touch that little spot unless you actually want it to change something. It probably gets fine. But yeah, I kept changing things all the time. It also has, and I keep trying this, and it hates me. The Hey Mercedes thing. Hey Mercedes hates me. I was like, okay, everyone quiet. Like it'd be the whole car. Utter silence from everyone. Like, hey Mercedes, directions to McDonald's. I'm sorry, Nicole. Say that again. You know, it's like it never ever hears me. It's always, or it'll give me the can't help you with that right now. That's not found. Please be more specific. And I'm like, directions to McDonald's. I don't know how to be more specific.
Sounds like
than
they
that.
use the same voice recognition software as Volkswagen, which is just utterly trash.
Yeah, it just couldn't get it. And then when it gets it, it's like, oh, hey, cool. We'll take you to McDonald's. Here you go. Enjoy your Diet Coke. But it took 25 minutes for me to say, and I've gone by 3 McDonald's trying to get it to give me directions to a McDonald's. So this one, I'm not a fan of the voice control. I like the idea that you can say, hey, Mercedes. Also, I don't think I said the word Mercedes that much when I was driving, but the car thought I did because every now and then it's just like listening. And I'm like, I didn't call your attention. Why? And you see this like little squiggly thing on the infotainment
Maybe you
screen?
hit the little voice button with the microphone with your hand while you're moving everything on it.
You're probably right, Rob. It's probably my own fault. It's like, yes, you did call for me. But
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
kept thinking-
it is a premium German car, so anything that went wrong is clearly your fault.
That's true.
100% user error. It is not a design flaw at
is
all.
not.
No
No.
way. So I had some fights with the infotainment system, but it is like, it's a nice big screen. The 10.25 is a big screen. It's very crisp. It's very clear. When, it's easy to see. It's not like everything is really good. I like the system. I like the features it has. It's got like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It has the features you want. It just doesn't like me. I just have a hard time with it. But I think that's a me thing because I've experienced this in a couple Mercedes where I have a tough time. I still like it better than the stupid rotary controller in a Mazda. So there you go.
See, it works really well for me. Mm-hmm. But I drive a lot of Mercedes. So I think every time I get in the car, they're like, hey, Robbie's getting in the car. He's God, this guy will not leave us alone.
He's back again.
Let's make sure that this thing works with his dumb voice.
Yeah, mine doesn't. I don't know. I wonder if it's a voice thing. Do you think? Like, I'm curious.
It's voice. It's frequency. There's a lot of like variables. Like my cousin has a high voice, and she has she's born in America, but she has just a slight California Mexican accent in her voice.
Okay.
So I think that like really throws off. Like I remember like Siri, like for years, like it just would not understand her. She gets so angry. There's just like little itty bitty things, and they're getting better, but they're still not perfect. They're still, and I can't, when I'm doing these drives with these cars, I'm doing video inside the car, so I have like a camera in there and I have a little mic on, and I'll be saying things, and I'll accidentally say Mercedes, and then the little thing pops up, and it's like, "How can I help you?" I'm like, "Ah, shit, that shot's
Yeah, now
shot."
it's
So I have to like
messed up.
figure out how to turn it off, and it's a whole. It's a whole thing.
I try to.
So
leave
it works. It works too well for me, and not well enough.
Not well enough for me. I know. Well, technically, it is working too well because it's constantly turning on, and I don't need it. I'm like, I don't know why you're turned on because I just pulled into my driveway and I'm about to turn the car off. I did not ask you to do anything.
So all it hears from you is Mercedes. What?
Yeah.
What are you saying? What are you saying, Nicole? Mercedes.
That's kind of how it feels like.
Car is very
It's like the
frustrating.
teacher in Peanuts.
Yeah.
Yes,
The Peanuts
everything
cartoon.
except the
Womp,
word
womp,
Mercedes.
womp,
I
womp,
sound
womp.
like the teacher in Peanuts. Yeah, that's how the system thinks I am.
Mercedes. Womp 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 womp
Wah, wah,
womp.
wah, 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 wah.
All right. And what kind of fuel economy did you get out of this thing?
I aimed. I got pretty close to what they said. So the official fuel economy, it's 20 city, 27 highway, 22 combined. I was doing a lot of highway driving in this, and I was like at 23-ish, and it was mostly highway. So I feel like that's pretty fair. I wasn't nice to it. I was relatively aggressive on the gas.
Well, it is an AMG. I mean,
Yeah,
you
it's
want
not
to
like
use
it's
it
like
for
I'm
what
not
it's
gonna
designed for.
I'm not gonna putter onto the highway like a little old lady. So I was aggressive in the driving, but completely legal. So I feel like that was pretty good fuel economy for given how I was driving it and based on what it was saying it should be getting. So
Good.
yeah.
All right. Roberto, what have you been driving?
So I'm just going to segue into this. I was driving the EQB, which is the electric version of the GLB.
Oh, Mercedes all the time.
Yeah, all Mercedes all the time. I flew out to Germany. I went to the Immendingen test facility. And
Is
they
that
had...
really how you say that, or did you mutilate that?
Nope, that's how they say it. That's how they say it because
Immendingen?
Immendingen, because I did we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I did Drive Pilot there like months and months and months ago, and I had to do a stand-up, and I kept having to walk back over to the German and ask,
How do you pronounce this again?
How do you say this?
Immendingen? Immendingen.
Oh, that's funny.
So now that I know how to say it, I don't know how to say it wrong.
Okay. I will never
So-
say it wrong either. Thanks, Robbie.
There we go. Immendingen. And then I double checked, and we're driving around. I'm like I had a co-pilot for one of the drives. I'm like, Immendingen? He's like, yeah, that's fine. I'm like, all right.
Okay.
I might still be saying it wrong. They're probably just like, you know what? You're never going to get it right.
So we get those emails from everybody who lives in Germany that we're saying it wrong. This is entirely
I
Robbie's
apologize.
fault.
I apologize for butchering the name of your fine town, which is it's very quaint. It's in the south in Bavaria. Anywho, EQB. I drove the 300 and the 350. The EQB 300. They're both 4MATIC, so both four-wheel drive. Starts at $54,500. The EQB 4MATIC 350 is $58,050. So you can get a Mercedes-Benz luxury SUV electric vehicle for under 60 grand. Well, probably 60 once you throw in all the how much things cost to ship to your house if you get the 350. What's funny is that we just talked about how it's very well proportioned. You can get these with a third row. A third row.
The EQB with a third row?
The EQB with the third row, but because it's Mercedes, they tell you right up front in the press release, people who are 5'4" will be fine. Anyway,
Anybody?
no, don't put tall people back here. Yeah, I've never seen that anyone else's like third row. They're always like, hey, we got a third row. Like, how tall? They're like, it's a third row. Mercedes is like, is a third row. If you're 5'4", you'll be slightly comfortable. Everyone else, not so much.
At least they're honest. 5'4", that's your cutoff, folks. Otherwise, don't bother.
So if you have, if you're shorter than me, I don't want to say short. If you're 5'4", I've dated someone who was 5'4", so I guess she was short. If you're shorter than me, or if you're a child,
And you're what, 6'4"?
I'm 6'3".
6'3"? Okay.
It was high school. Things were crazy. And so 5'4", if you have children, you can put 7 people in this vehicle, or if you are short people. They didn't have the third row for me to try out. And at this point, I don't really try those things out much unless it looks like I'll fit back there. If it looks like I'm not going to fit, there's no point other than what am I going to take a picture of me looking like a fool, smashed in the back as like a shrimp all shriveled up and
Yes, do that. I want the
punched
next
over.
time there's a third row in a car that is clearly too small for you, I triple dog dare you to crawl into the third row and take a picture. To see you
Just for
with
Nicole.
with your knees all the way up to your chin.
That's what it's like. So you get the 2 trim levels. The 300 has 225 horsepower, 288 pound-feet of torque. The 350 has 288 horsepower, 394 pound-feet of torque. And they're definitely not the AMG. They're not AMGs, but they are adequate. They work well. Drove it a little bit on the Autobahn, drove it a little bit on the German back roads. Everything you're supposed to do with this car, you can do with it. It is a 400 volt system, so it's not. Yeah, don't get excited. It's only charges at 100. The DC fast charge rate is 100 kilowatt hours. And then we come down to the range, which I wasn't supposed to know this, but I found out anyway. It's about 230 miles of range, which this is, and here's the thing, is that most people, that's 90% of the people who are driving, 99% of the time, that's going to be totally fine. But in the United States, we have this very, 250 is sort of the minimum for people. So I think it's going to hurt. I really like this car. It's really nice. It's very comfortable. It's well proportioned as we've, it's, you get all the Mercedes bits. You get the Hey Mercedes, but you still get the little touchpad. It's because they've removed the touchpad on the newer cars with the Hey Mercedes and the new version of the infotainment system. And so you get both. You get the best of both worlds. You get old school Mercedes and new school Mercedes in this. But it is definitely, I think what people are going to buy this for is their second luxury vehicle. It's the vehicle for mom and dad to take the kids around town, to take them to school, to go shopping. It is the around town Mercedes, utility vehicle. This is the workhorse. This is the thing you shove all the stuff in the back. You get lots of room once you put the second seat down. If you have a third seat, you can put that one down too. If you get the third seat, you can take all the kids to soccer practice or baseball or whatever kids, lacrosse, I guess, rich people play.
Whatever practice they choose to go to.
I've only seen rich people play lacrosse, so I'm assuming there's a lot of lacrosse players.
Do I know anyone that's played lacrosse?
Well,
I'm trying to think. Oh, I know one person who played. And they're not a rich people, Robbie. They're normal people.
It's it just always seems like an East Coast rich person thing to me.
Well, this is just an East Coast normal person thing, but exactly one human I know who plays it of all the people. But this one person is not.
When he goes to lacrosse, he's the poverty kid, right?
Yeah, I'm so telling him that.
He's the one on the scholarship.
We decided you guys are the poverty people.
He cruises in his Camry and just like a regular human car, and everyone else is pulling up.
I think he does have some really boring.
Just a regular human thing. And everyone comes rolling up in their Mercedes and their Porsches, the tricked out G-Wagons.
He just squeezes in there in his beat up Camry. Now I got to figure out what kind of car exactly he has. If it's a Camry, I'll die laughing. Okay.
Oh, poor Camry.
Probably a Corolla.
Camry's a good car.
It is.
It has a 70.5 kilowatt hour usable battery pack capacity. That was a weird sentence to say. It's very convoluted. Anyway, the battery pack has 70.5 kilowatt hours of usable energy, 230 miles of range, a little bit less for the 350. It's I feel like if this car came out 3 years from now, I don't think the 230 miles of range would matter. I think everyone would be like, yeah, whatever. It's fine, 230. I think right now, it might be a little tough to sell it, just a little. But then again, the Polestar had less than 250, and people were buying that thing. So, fingers crossed that people are sort of figuring out that anything over 200 is
I don't,
fine.
What? I'd like to think that, but it's interesting. I've had just in the last couple of weeks, quite a few friends who said, hey, would you go to an electric vehicle? Would you buy one? Like, I'm looking at my next one being an EV. And these are just normal Joes, no one fancy. And they all sort of still have that concern. Like, well, how far do you go? I'm like, how far away do you drive to work? Your office is 10 minutes from here. You drive to the office. You drive around a little bit. You come back. I said, when do you ever drive over 200, 250, 300, 350 miles in a day? They're like, well, a road trip. I'm like, so how often is that? I'm like, you
Once
have
a
another
year?
car,
Twice
right?
a year?
Yeah, and so but it's funny when you say that to someone when they're genuinely asking you and you tell them, and they sort of have that moment of like, well, yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't do that all the time. And I'm like, then go buy one. If you want one, buy it. Like you're already you don't need to. But the number of questions I get where people worry about that makes me think most people are still very worried about it.
Yeah, I had the conversation with someone I was on a road trip with recently where we were driving 420 miles or something. and they were like, well, until they hit 500 miles. And I was like, no, that's.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're not going to drive straight through on this trip.
Yeah. How
There's
often?
no
how often
way
do you
we're
drive
going to
500 miles without a pit stop?
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, how big is your bladder?
And honestly, if you're like, say you went all in, you have 2 EVs, you do not want to have to stop on the once, maybe twice a year road trip you go on where you would need to stop to charge because you just are not ready to stop. Then rent a car that one time a year. Like, it's not like, people have been renting cars to do road trips forever because you have too many people or you have too much stuff. You have a sedan at home. The sedan, your Elantra is not going to take your family of 4 on a huge road trip with all their stuff. You rent something. Like, still, the net, just rent a car for the odd occasion that you think you need something and you just do not want to stop and have to charge and worry about finding a charging station. It's not that hard. It's like a couple times a year.
If we're going further than 3 hours away from our house for a trip and we're taking the dogs, we rent a van.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we could stick them in the back of the Kona and do it, but we're like, nah, dogs won't be comfortable for that
See?
long.
Yeah.
So it's not even a range thing, and it's only because of the dog.
Right? So, I mean, like, people rent cars like you for the dogs. It's like, rental cars are out there for more than just like, I've flown to another town and need a car. You can use them for road trip stuff. You can use them for other things. I feel like if you're nervous about it, God, just rent a car for those few occasions. And I think then people will realize genuinely how few times they really need to have something. Like, how many times do you think, well, I'm just going to rent a car instead? Not very often. You're going to realize it doesn't really happen that often, that you need something or you truly want something that has a ridiculous number of miles and is bigger.
And of course, when I was doing that long trip, I was worried about gas the entire time. Like, oh, this is going to be so expensive.
I have a Ford Expedition coming for a road trip I'm doing next weekend, which is great because I have a lot of people, but I'm like, oh God, what does that get? Like 1 mpg?
And even if you live in New England, where it gets very cold in the wintertime and you've got to crank up the heat, and the window defoggers and things like that, you're still going to have, with 200 miles, you're still going to have plenty of range for, whatever you need to do.
Well, and the reality is, like, you're right, because you do lose some range when you have cold weather, but most of the time, for most people that have a lot of people that have families or doing, how often do you do road trips in the winter? You normally, if you're doing a road trip, it's the summer. I mean, you do them in the winter, but like families, you're going in the summer when you've got the kids out of school. Like, the winter road trip is not as common, so it's like an even less of an issue. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
So yeah, the EQB 230. It's a good car. It's like the GLB. The GLB is a good car. It's a modular platform, so they can put a GLB AMG. They can throw a hybrid in there, and they can throw the EV powertrain in there as well. So it's a good for Mercedes on doing that. We'll see how well it does. I also drove while.
Well, hold on before you. Move on.
Wait.
When does the EQB go on sale in the U.S.?
Oh, summer.
This
Like
summer
now?
or next summer?
This summer.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So I mean, that's very soon.
Because it's like, it's
There's not much
Summer
left to summer.
I was gonna say, we're
2022.
in summer.
Yeah, it just says summer 2022.
And did
Oh,
you say
okay.
what the pricing's going to be on that?
Yeah, at the beginning I said 54,500
Okay.
for the 300 and 58,000 for the 350.
Pay
Okay.
attention, Sam.
Sorry.
Wait, what was I? Oh yeah, EQXX. So then I went to Eamon and then I drove the EQXX, their concept vehicle that they built to get 1,000 kilometers per charge from a battery pack that is less than 100 kilowatt hours. They won't tell you how much less. They say it's like near
99.985.
Yeah, exactly. So earlier this year in April, they did 621 miles on a single charge, going through the Alps from Germany down to France. And then they're like, oh, you know what? We can do this again. So then they did 747 miles of range from Stuttgart down to Silverstone, across over to Silverstone in the UK. And they did have to use the Eurotunnel. So, it's not a hydroplane car. It's not a magic hybrid flying car, boat car. But, and so on that trip, they were doing 7.5 miles per kilowatt hour, which is...
That's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
It is.
So they let me drive it because, I don't know, they've lost their minds. Like, but I think to drive it on like public roads. We're again Immendingen. I just love saying it now.
I know
how.
every time you say it, I'm like, go, Robbie, you got this.
They have these big test tracks. And so they have just roads that we drive along, and it's funny because you're driving, and then like a little sign will pop up, and it's like a little flag of like Japan, Korea, China. Like it recreates those roads in that portion of the track. So you're just like, oh, I'm in Italy. Oh, I'm in France. I'm in China. I'm in Korea. It's funny because Korea, you could tell that one side was like a nice Korean road, and then the other side was the rest of the Korean roads. And that's not the side I was driving on. Like one side was pretty messed up. It's like Korean roads can be pretty hardcore, like messed up. Yeah, no, it was fun. It was fun to drive. It's a vehicle with it is. I was really surprised how close to production feeling it felt. For a concept car, a concept test car, there's only one. There's only one in the entire world. And they let me drive it.
They have a lot of faith in you.
There's one that's got finished body work and interior and everything. I'm pretty sure that there are at least several others that are, mules that have all the hardware for development and everything.
Well, the hardware for the development is actually an EMA, which is an EQB.
Okay.
So they got an EQ, they got a GLB, they ripped out all of its gas parts, and all the drivetrain, the rear-wheel drive, the battery, everything that's in the EQXX is in this GLB, and it's called EMA.
Okay.
And so that is their test mule. And so instead of having to build two EQXXs, they have EMA, which they have. I guess they have a couple of these those GLBs they use for mules, and this one specifically for the EQXX. And so before they did the initial trip in April in the EQXX, they did it in EMA, and they had to stop and get charged because it doesn't have the drag coefficient obviously of a EQXX. But yeah, no. So I got to drive Emma as well. So I got to drive this really weird, like Frankenstein vehicle around. It was interesting because they're like, oh yeah, it's Emma. They're not quite sure. It's like it's like something E and then like modular something. And so they're like, we're not really sure like what Emma stands for.
But there we go. But it works. So
we like it. We like the way it sounds.
Very un-German.
Yeah.
It was like I thought they have like a bunch of like design versions of it like that don't move.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like there's some bits and pieces and it looks nice, and I did stand-ups in front of those because if all other journalists were driving the EQXX. And what's interesting is that it looks like this like supercar, supercar sports car, but it's really an efficiency vehicle. So it gets a top speed of like 85 miles an hour.
Oh.
And it has 241 horsepower, and the way that the acceleration is mapped is it doesn't have that crazy EV torque at the beginning. So it sort of eases into it, and then the torque band goes up like later on.
Do you miss that? Would you like the crazy EV torque, or are you glad that it doesn't have that?
It felt fine, really, to be honest. When I hit it, it is kind of nice to have that because you can scare your friends. And then when you're going and you hit it, then it's there. And so I think it was just to like help to make sure that they get the most efficient vehicle possible, but it's still drivable. It's still gonna take off. When you need it. It's built on a 900 volt architecture, while the rest of the Mercedes lineup, the real lineup, is 400 volt, which gives me a good feeling that hopefully Mercedes be moving to an 800 volt or 900 volt system in the near future, just because that 400 volt system really it keeps you constrained when it comes to DC fast charging. The fastest you can go is 200, but most everyone's stuck down at 190 kilowatts of charging. It has passive cooling. It's very comfortable inside, and has like shag carpet, and it just looks really cool.
It has shag carpet? Is it like avocado green? Harvest gold?
No, it's like blue. Everything's blue because everything green is blue. And what?
How big is it?
I don't know. It's like yay big.
Yay big. He's holding his hands.
Like C-class size, a little bigger, a little smaller.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably like probably it's smaller, probably like C.
So more
I'm
like
trying to-
like a CLA. Like the old
Yeah,
CLA?
yeah, more like a CLA. It has back seats, but I don't think any humans could sit back there.
Okay.
It's a coupe, like a proper coupe. It doesn't have 4 doors, it has 2 doors. It has this gigantic. How big is it? It's 40. I'm sorry, I didn't even look at my notes. I'm trying to find it in my notes. I know I wrote it down. Maybe I wrote them down somewhere else. Anyway, 40 plus inches, one giant screen across the front from pillar to pillar, and it's actually really cool because it'll show you like the wind like where the wind's coming from and the speed.
Because
like
that's something I often wish. Geez,
Well,
which direction is the wind coming
for
from
them,
right now?
like they can look at it and determine like how efficient the vehicle is going to be going against the wind versus with a tailwind with this,
Oh, so do they factor that into the range estimation
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
give
and
you
then
more
they have-
accurate range estimation?
And then you can tell where the sun is, like the angle of the sun, because it has solar panels on top, which add like 25. It adds 25 kilometers, but the reality is that it adds 25 kilometers by not making the vehicle's battery pack power the infotainment system and the HVAC system.
Okay.
So
Really?
that powers
So
the
it's using
infotainment-
that
so
for
the
ancillary
sun-
systems, yeah.
The sun powers the infotainment system.
So the sun powers the electronic bits.
Yeah, and
not
then
so
it
much
tells you
the-
like, your drag coefficient as you're driving, and it shows you when, your passive cooling's open and closed, and when the active aerodynamics are out or open, and all this stuff. And it looks really, really nice. Like they didn't have to make it look this nice. So clearly
And it looks good.
It looks really, really good. You're like, this is like the most interactive, like the most information out of an infotainment system. And a lot of like the details are way over on the passenger side because the thing is so wide, which is for the the passenger to like make notes. Oh, okay, we're driving on this road. And but overall, I mean, this is it's a really, really fun, cool car. It's always fun to drive concept cars. Again, it's really close to what a production car will be, but they're not going to sell you an EQXX. They don't have Mercedes. We don't have plans to bring this car to market.
Ever?
We don't have
Any
plans.
guys? Aw.
We don't have plans, which makes me feel like, maybe they do have plans. We don't have plans, but if enough journalists say we really like this and enough people like on
Maybe
the internet
then
say,
they would have plans.
yeah, like they would have like, a less, obviously not however billions of dollars it costs to build this one, like, a short run, 100 a year, maybe 1,000 because it's a 1,000-kilometer car. Well, now it's more than that. 747 miles is a lot. But overall, it was really a great concept vehicle. And, it's always fun to drive those, but it's more important that a lot of the tech that's in this vehicle will make its way into the Mercedes-Benz lineup, which should make everything more efficient, which, again, hopefully they'll hit a 800 or 900 volt system in the near future.
Yeah, they do have a new vehicle platform coming out in 2024.
The modular.
Which is going to be an EV. And, so this... most of the technologies you see in this thing will probably be in that vehicle.
Yeah, it's pretty great. If you go to a car show and it's there, go look at it. It's just a beautiful car, and they could have just made a teardrop, or I guess it's supposed to be a raindrop, but for some reason in my brain, because I listened to the Smiths too much growing up,
It's a teardrop.
It's a teardrop. that perfect drag coefficient vehicle is a teardrop, or a raindrop. Sorry.
All right. Hey, Wheel Bearings listeners, it's Sam. And as I'm recording this, we're getting ready to head out tomorrow for a vacation trip in Hawaii. And one of the great things about going to Hawaii is all the fresh fish and the Asian-inspired food. We just love it there. We love eating the food there. And when we get back, we still love to eat that same kind of food, food of the Pacific Islands. And this May, HelloFresh is helping by celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So for a limited time only, you can get some of that same kind of food with limited time authentic recipes created in partnership with chef Serbi Sani of New York's Tagmo restaurant, who's creating a special cultural taste tour right in your own kitchen. After May is over, as we get into the summer months, you're probably going to be having friends over for parties and everything. So if you're hosting a get-together, check out HelloFresh Market for crowd-pleasing appetizers, snacks, sides, and more for your next gathering. It'll save you a lot of time and a lot of hassle putting everything together as you get your friends together in the backyard. The best part, you can skip that extra trip to the grocery store. All you have to do is go to hellofresh.com/wheelbearings16, that's wheelbearings16, and use the coupon code wheelbearings16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. Remember, go to hellofresh.com/wheelbearings16 and use the coupon code wheelbearings16, that's wheelbearings16, for 16 free meals with free shipping. HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit. So if you haven't tried it yet, now's the perfect opportunity to get 16 free meals. I also had some time last week with an electric vehicle, which I will get to in a minute. But first, before we went on vacation, when we were last recording, I was driving the new 2023 Nissan Z. No numbers now, just Z. That's all it is. No 400Z or anything else, just Z. I had driven it for a couple of hours back in early June, I think it was, maybe late May. Really enjoyed the car, and got to spend a whole week with it, see what it's like to live with. And it's still really good. This is a great sports car. I think, it's a lot of what's underneath in terms of the platform it's not entirely new. There's a lot of carryover bits, but they've been refined and improved from the previous generation Z, which is fine because there was not really much wrong with that. The powertrain is the 3-liter twin-turbo V6 that has been in some of the Infinitis and the Q50 and the Q60, not Redline, I forget what the branding is that they use, but the higher performance versions of the Infiniti Q50 and Q60 sedans.
Is it Red Sport?
Red Sport, that's it.
Is it Red Sport? Okay.
Yes, that's the one.
I was like, wait, what is it?
So it's a 400 horsepower twin-turbo V6, 350 foot-pounds of torque. It feels a lot stronger than the old 370Z naturally aspirated V6, even though it's only 3 liters now. It's the same wheelbase as before. The car itself, the body is a couple of inches longer than before, so there's a little bit more overhang. But I really like the design of this one. It's modern, but there's some cues that harken back to old Zs of old. And I took it to a Cars and Coffee on a Saturday morning here in Birmingham, and I had it parked next to one of the guys from Autoblog had brought a 911 GT3, the brand new one, and I had it parked next to that one. And there were probably a lot more people taking a look at the Nissan because this was in the blue that they have, which is a fantastic shade of blue. A lot more Sierran blue is what they call it.
Sierran, ooh, that's fancy.
Since very few people had seen it in person up to that point, it was garnering a lot more attention than the 911. Even though it was a high-end 911, people see 911s at that Cars and Coffee event.
911s and 911s and 911 and 911.
There's always at least 8 or 10 at a minimum 911s at that Cars and Coffee event, and you see them all the time. So this was the first time most people were seeing the Z the new Z in person, and people really seemed to like it. And I had a great time driving this thing. I had the one with the manual transmission. There's 2 in the local fleet here. One's an automatic, the other one's a manual. I had the manual. This is the launch edition, I think it's the launch edition is what they're calling it, or something like that. So it also had the blue interior that matched the exterior, very, very flashy looking. The price on this one was $53,210, including delivery charges. Base price on the Z is $40,000, which is actually pretty reasonable for the level of performance that you get. It's quite a bit cheaper than a Supra, and has similar or better performance, arguably better looking the Supra. Certainly a cleaner looking design. It's not quite as over designed in some respects, and it's got it carries over some of the features from before. Like, for example, if you're less comfortable driving a manual transmission really fast, it still has the synchro rev matching for shifting. So, if your heel and toe technique is not quite up to par, it'll do the rev matching with the engine as soon as you move the shifter, and so it makes driving a lot smoother that way. It's got a mechanical limited slip differential. It's a 9-inch touchscreen, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto support. And when you look at this thing, you wouldn't think that there's actually that much luggage room. But my wife and I took this car we dropped it off at the airport when we were heading out on our vacation. And there was plenty of room in the back for 2 standard carry-on cases, plus a couple of backpacks. And we could have...
Really? That surprises me. I would think that there would be barely enough room for the backpacks.
No, it's because it's a fairly long cargo area. It's not real deep. But I could lay down two suitcases in there, and then the backpacks on either side, in the corners.
I guess I can see that. Okay, that's cool.
So you've got it's not a real deep, but it's a fairly broad cargo area. Because then when I got the car, I explicitly took the suitcases out there because I wanted to figure out if I needed to arrange for alternate transportation to the airport, or if I could just drop that one off at the airport.
Get them all Jenga them in there somehow.
Yeah, no, I didn't take any Jenga action. Just drop them in there, fit perfectly. So it was great. It'd be a great car for a weekend getaway for a couple. Take what you need. What else? I did my paddleboard test. My inflatable paddleboard fits in the back as well. So there's room for that.
It's like an SUV. At this point, it's practically an SUV.
You might as well trade in your Pathfinder and get a Z.
Exactly. Same thing. Same thing. The Z just drives nicer. That's it.
That's right. You don't want to take 5 kids along.
Leave them at home.
Exactly. The kids can take care of
themselves. Put a little water.
Just grab your significant other. Go for a drive. That's great. I got about 19 miles per gallon with it, which is about one less. The EPA label is 20 for the manual. Decent, but not great fuel economy. But this is a toy. It's a sports car, so it's about what you'd expect.
Right.
So it was a lot of fun to drive. I really enjoyed this car, and if I was looking to buy a new sports car right now, this would definitely be near the top of the list from what's available right now. That is relatively attainable, looks great, drives great, and has kind of the modern amenities that you expect in a new car. So I dropped off the Z at the airport, at Detroit Metro Airport.
See you later. Sorry, I've waited the entire time to say that. I'm always going to drop it off. He's going to talk about how I got rid of it.
And we got on a plane, flew out to San Francisco, and from there I picked up a Ford Mustang Mach-E GT, Performance Edition, actually. So the highest end of the high-end Mach-E's.
Fancy.
Well, it took a little finagling. We had to switch cars a couple of times before the trip. I was originally going to have a Polestar 2, and I got a call from the fleet company on Friday and said, that car got damaged on a previous loan. It's in the shop waiting for some parts. So I was going to get a regular Mach-E, not the GT, because the GT wasn't going to be available till the second day of our trip, when we were already going to be up north. And then something happened. Oh, that one had a tire that needed replacing, and they had to wait a couple of days for a tire. So they put me in they moved things around and got me the GT in time for our arrival at SFO. And we hopped in, drove that one up north, drove up to first to Santa Rosa, grabbed some groceries, and then turned west into the redwood forests of Northern California. And the GT Performance Edition is only rated at 260 miles. The regular GT is 270 miles of range. And if you look at a map of where charging stations are in this region of Northern California, or actually a lot of places, you'll find that there are lots and lots of public charging stations, and there's like DC fast charging stations every 10 miles, all the way up 101. But as soon as you get more than about 2 or 3 miles away from Highway 101, there's nothing. I mean,
It's desolate. It's a desert. No charging for you.
There's no public charging. There, in the whole region where we were staying, there were like 2 hotels that had Tesla destination chargers, which are their AC, their 20 or 40 amp AC chargers. And at least on the map, there was no no non-Tesla chargers anywhere in the entire region. So we stopped at Whole Foods to grab some groceries. There was an EVgo charger there. Plugged it in, topped it off there, in about 20 minutes while we were getting our groceries, and then we headed west to the place we were staying, which was a little place in the middle of the forest, right next to a creek. And fortunately, when we got there, it turns out that there was a plug on the outside of the house, and the cord was just long. The cord with the car was just long enough to reach from that plug to where I had the car parked, with maybe about a foot to spare. And so I was able to keep it topped up there, just off of a 120 volt outlet, and that worked out fine. The GT, I know there have been people that have driven the GT on the track, and were less impressed by its handling behavior and everything else on a racetrack. And when the Michigan State Police did their annual testing of police vehicles last fall, they included the Mach-E GT. Ford supplied a Mach-E GT for them to test for their work at Gingerman Raceway in Western Michigan, and they had some complaints about the way it behaved, in persistent high speed performance on the track, but on the road. This region, the roads rarely go straight for more than, a few hundred feet. It's lots of twists and turns. And after not too long after we left Santa Rosa, my wife was saying, can you back it off just a little bit there? If you've ever, ridden shotgun, on roads like this, it can be a little unsettling to your stomach. So I did back off a little bit. And I was using the one pedal drive mode in the Mach-E, and I was able to, that system in the Mach-E is the way it's tuned. It's you can drive shockingly smoothly, just modulating your foot on the accelerator pedal. As long as you're not like lifting your foot off the accelerator all the time, just up and down. You can keep the amount of acceleration and deceleration to a minimum and still maintain a decent speed, but be much smoother. And on the road, while the Mach-E GT may not be the perfect track car, on the road, it's for something that weighs nearly 5,000 pounds. It does remarkably well. And it's the Performance Edition. You get Magna Ride dampers on there, which those things are amazing. They're whatever you put those on, it always makes the car better. And we had a great time with this thing, driving around Northern California. Going to places like Bodega Bay and Timber Cove and Marshall. We ate lots of oysters. Had lots of fresh oysters from Tamales Bay.
Yum.
And just
good. You went to
lovely
Tamales
time.
Bay. Okay.
Yep.
No.
And we went to Goat Rock Beach. One day we grabbed some sandwiches from a place and went out to Goat Rock Beach, where we went with the Infiniti QX60 last
Yes,
summer.
that's supposed to be like one of the most dangerous beaches in the universe as far as getting swept away if you're in the water.
Yes, they warn you, do not go in the water here.
Yeah.
Northern California just kills people left and right.
Yeah.
It's all quaint and beautiful, but the water hill just... When I first moved to the San Francisco, I lived out by Ocean Beach, and there was just constantly like... And one day, after about 2 months, I was like, Does anyone talk about the fact that how often the water here just kills tourists? So stay out of the water is what I'm trying to say. Unless you're a very good swimmer and you understand how the ocean works, don't. Just
they had us there, and it was like I was with another journalist, and she's Eileen, and she's like taking video, and I'm watching the water that's coming really close, and I'm like, she's gonna get washed away. I'm like doing this like, Eileen, stop. And she literally gives me the 1 minute finger, like that, hold 1 minute. And I'm like, I tried to save your butt. You're on your own now, girl. Water like up halfway up her thighs, her shoes. And I'm like, I tried to tell you. You didn't listen to me and you almost died. But
but she didn't.
She didn't. She survived. It was almost death. She's still here. She's still here. Yeah.
Never turn your back on the ocean.
Never turn. Yeah. My dad used to say it all the time. Oh, God.
Really? No, it's true. It's the water
it's a thing.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
It's nuts. You
those
need to be really
waves when a big one comes in. I mean, there's a lot of power in that water. So the efficiency of this thing, driving up 101 to Santa Rosa and back, driving at highway speeds, the Mach-E was getting about 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour, which is fine. It's pretty close to what the EPA label rating is. That would work if I just did a full charge at 75 miles an hour. Then get about 245, 250 miles of range out of it. When we got off the highway on the slightly lower speed, curvy stuff, it actually jumped up to about 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour. Over the course of the whole week, we averaged about 3.3, which works out to about 300 miles of driving range. So it's split roughly evenly between highway and back road driving. Would have gotten about 300 miles out of a full charge, which is quite a bit better than the EPA label rating. Really enjoyed driving this thing. One thing I did notice when we were heading north from San Francisco, I turned on the Blue Cruise, and one of the complaints I've had with Blue Cruise on the F-150 and the Lightning is, and also on the Lincoln Navigator, is they tend to have a relatively monochromatic color scheme, primarily blue, for the instrument cluster. And we've talked about this before, where it's not always immediately clear. It's not always so obvious when it's changing modes between hands-free and hands-on the wheel, because it doesn't change full colors. The Mach-E, when the headlights are off, the default color scheme for the instrument cluster is actually white, and then when the lights are on, it goes to gray. And then when you're in Blue Cruise hands-free mode, it goes to blue. So especially in daylight, but even at night, you can tell much more readily when it is switching mode between hands-free and hands-on. When it wants you to put your hands on the wheel, it's much more obvious than it is in those other vehicles. So that's an improvement. The system's still not as good as Super Cruise, GM Super Cruise, but
really
it's that slight HMI difference is a big improvement compared to the F-150 and the Navigator. So that is the Mach-E GT Performance Edition, which the one as I drove priced out to $69,600, including the $1,100 destination charge, which is quite modest for a modern Ford.
Right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
It was the base price for the GT is $59,900. And total of $8,600 in options, so that got it to just shy of $70,000, which is not cheap. But if you're looking for a mid-size, fairly high-performance crossover that's electric, that gets decent range, it's definitely one to take a look at. And there's also another direct competitor to this car coming about a year from now.
Yes.
The 2024 Chevrolet Blazer EV.
Is it really a direct competitor, or is the difference between the whole aura of a Mustang versus Blazer two totally, entirely, completely different humans?
I think by branding alone, I would definitely say that. Okay. But when you look at this vehicle, look at the specs, look at clearly who it's the intended market for the Blazer EV is not is by no stretch of the imagination the same people who would have owned, a K10 Blazer back in the 1970s or 1980s, which was a big full-size body on frame, gas and V8 engined, SUV, the predecessor to the Tahoe. This is a completely different customer, and I really think that it very clearly is targeted at the Mach-E and the Model Y. It's similar in size. They didn't give us the exact dimensions. I saw it. It looks pretty close. What they would say is that it's similar in size to the current gas engine Blazer, which is about 6 inches longer than a Mach-E or a Model Y, but otherwise, pretty similar overall. The limited amount of specs they gave us, it's pretty spot on, with the range, with the performance range that you're going to get with the Mach-E. The base model is going to have a range of about 247 miles, which coincidentally is exactly what you get with the base Mach-E. The longest range RS version, or actually I think it's the 1LT, is projected to be 320 miles, and then variations in between that, depending on which powertrain you get. One thing that is unique about this, with the Mach-E, you can get it as rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. With the Blazer, you can get a front-wheel drive, or you can get rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. So you can get the motors mounted wherever you want.
Like whatever the heck you feel like.
Yeah.
Your poison.
Weird.
Okay. Why?
Why make that front-wheel drive?
Actually, I think I do know. I think that probably the reason why they offer the front-wheel drive version is, you're going to be able to get more regenerative braking out of a front-wheel drive vehicle than out of a rear-drive vehicle, because your front brakes do most of the work. So they probably ran the numbers and realized, okay, if we do a front-drive model, we can get this thing up to 247 miles of range. If we do a rear-drive model, we're maybe only going to get 230. And so they probably decided, okay, we'll offer the front-drive version to get that minimum range up there.
That's the fleet vehicle.
Yeah, so that's with the standard range battery, and the front-wheel drive. We'll get 247. Oh, and Chevrolet did announce that they will be offering an official police package version of the Blazer EV.
No kidding.
Yeah.
He's going to sneak right up on you. You won't even know he's there.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, do they have to turn? Can they turn off the low-speed jingle jangle sound that they have to have on vehicles?
I don't know, but
I feel like you'd have to, because they're trying to be all stealthy, right? Going in, because now I've turned it into a TV show, every single cop's life. What if they're trying to be all stealthy, like sneaking into like where the bad guys are camped out? They want to be as quiet as they can, but then all of a sudden the car's going woo, 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 woo as it's pulling in. I feel like that would not be helpful to their stealthiness.
But I mean, they're
Probably
stealthy
not.
in the gas cars right now, so it's like.
No, but like if you had the stealth, why would you give up the stealth? You should be like, you can disable auto start stop. You should be able to
As a
disable the little beepy noise
Stealth.
as a cop. Just,
I just like
it should
the idea of the
actually
cops
be a
pulling-
stealth mode.
Coming up to people with their ice cream truck type sounds, like.
But the question is, do you really want cops sneaking up on you?
No.
Well, I'm not a
be
bad guy,
honest,
so I'm not worried about cops sneaking up
That's
on
what
me.
you think. That's what you think. There's a whole thing. I have a whole.
You know you're not a bad guy.
You think you're not a bad guy. That thing you're doing right now is probably illegal. That's the whole thing about. It's like, yeah, I have a whole long manifesto about not being a bad person or not doing things that people should be concerned about online. I'm like, oh, the reality is, but I'll.
But
I
online
digress.
is different than in my car. I don't think there's any
No, it's the
EV,
same thing.
EV
There's a lot of
online
things.
cops. But they can't sneak up on me online. No, I'm talking about like I'm doing bad things out in the real world, and he's sneaking up to me as I don't know, what are you doing? And you're in an abandoned warehouse making drugs. I don't know, whatever you're doing. I'm not worried about that. I am not doing those real
Well, if you're in the
things where
warehouse
I-
making drugs, you got the big drug making machine just running, clug, 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 clug.
And I would have guys
Be working in the basement of that, in this underground lair underneath the laundry that services the New Mexico chicken joint.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
You get me. That's exactly it. So I'm thinking about that. I don't do that. even though I have a plan for it. I don't do that, so I don't need to worry about the cops.
I mean, you
sneaking up
don't
on
do
me.
that we're aware of.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah.
Seems like you're really like making a case that you're not doing that, which now makes me wonder.
So, what do you think of the design of the Blazer EV?
It's fine.
Oh, that's the worst answer.
Oh, I think it's nicer than it probably, to be honest, probably than it has to be. I think people are going to buy it because they like the Blazer. I think the new Blazer looks really nice. I think this is like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, the thing that you made that looks nice is going to continue to look nice, and it'll be an EV.
The first thing that struck me when I walked into the studio and saw this thing was the front signature lights, which looked like they took them straight off of a Polestar or a Volvo. They looked just like the Thor's Hammer lights.
Hammer.
Yeah.
You're totally right. Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Now that you've said that,
Thor's going to be so angry.
Thor's going to be ticked off.
But the interior, yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's a good looking vehicle. The interior looked, was on the show car that they had there, was really nicely executed. Big 17.7 inch center touchscreen, digital instrument cluster. The one that they had there was an SS, which is going to be the top of the line model, which is going to have like something like 556 horsepower, so more power than the Mach-E GT, but this also appears to be pretty. It's going to be largely the same underneath as the Cadillac Lyriq, and the Lyriq weighs 5,600 pounds. The Mach-E GT is just under 5,000 pounds. My guess is that this thing, because assuming it's a little bit bigger than the Mach-E, it's probably going to be somewhere in the 5,400 pound range, so a little heavier than the Ford. So it's not going to be, that's going to eat into the efficiency a bit, but it's also got a little bit bigger battery. It's going to be the large battery is going to be the same 100 kilowatt hour battery that's in the Lyriq, and then 190 kilowatt charging capability if you can find a charger that actually works at 190 kilowatt hours, 190 kilowatts. But we'll get to that later. But all the usual features that you expect on a modern vehicle. Pricing for the 1LT model is going to be 4 trims plus the cop car. The 1LT, 2LT, RS, and SS starts at about $45,000 and change, including delivery for the 1LT, going up to I think about 67 or so, 68 for the SS, and then everything in between. The 2LT and the RS launch in summer of 2023, so just about a year from now. And then next fall will be the SS, and then the 1LT and the police package launch in early 2024.
We got a ways to go for this. Somehow I thought it'd be coming sooner.
Yeah.
So the cops aren't going to sneak up on it just yet.
Not yet. I got a little more time from my drug den in the bottom of a warehouse. Yeah. Okay. I got about a year to wrap that up. Okay.
All the money, don't get greedy, is what I'm saying. If we learned anything from Breaking Bad, is that A, he was always a bad guy, and B, don't get greedy. That's what we learned.
Get greedy. Don't get greedy. Don't get greedy. Okay.
Yeah. He was always bad at heart. He never really broke bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next up. Scott Keogh, Ford VW of America, had a little reorganization this week. And Scott Keogh, who's been head of Volkswagen of America for the last several years, is no longer going to be the CEO of VW North America. He is now in charge of Scout, which we talked about a few weeks back. VW is relaunching the Scout brand, which they acquired ownership rights to when Traton, their commercial vehicle division, bought Navistar last year, and Navistar owned International Harvester and the Scout trademark. So they're relaunching Scout as an EV-only SUV and truck brand. And Scott Keogh is going to be in charge. What do you think?
Scott, I like Scott. When he was running Audi North America, when he went over to Volkswagen North America, but he's also like the guy who just says things that might be a little Like he's like, you know what, SUVs aren't going to be like number one forever. Like stuff like that. Like I can have conversations with him. He's very forthcoming. He has a lot of, but I think for Scout, this actually to me this makes Scout seem like more of a real thing that they're going to do. They're going to put somebody, a known entity who knows what he's doing, and I think is probably more suited to something that's new and exciting as opposed to jumping on the train that is Volkswagen America, which is just a constant moving thing. The ID4 is a fine vehicle, except for the infotainment stuff, which they finally fixed, and some of the cleverness. But it's also, it's not that exciting. It's not as exciting as stuff that's happening over at Audi. So we'll see. I think this is good for Scout. I don't know how Scott feels about this. He might but he might be excited about the idea of like getting off this giant monster train and jumping on something new and exciting. So we'll see.
I think it'd be kind of exciting to take the reins of a name that's coming back and coming back as an EV company or an EV. I think that could be exciting for him. I think I think it is only good for Scout. I don't think it's going to be a negative. I think it's a positive.
I'm curious. I mean, the Scout. The International Scout's been gone since the early 1980s, so it's been gone, 40 years.
Yeah.
As a new vehicle. There's still a base of fans for Scout. I mean, there's people that love Scouts. Mm-hmm. But do you think that this is a brand that has enough recognition that it's actually going to gain any traction? I
don't think it almost is like it doesn't really. I mean, there'll be people who will recognize it. I recognize it only because someone. I think of it as the car my best friend's dad drove like in years ago when I was really little, and that's my only memory of that brand. I didn't even know it was still around as late as it was. So I don't think there's necessarily like a huge legion of people that'll flock to it because Scout is back. But I just think it's neat to have the lure of a new brand name for the people who don't know that it existed before. Now it's something cool and new and EV only. I think it'll take a little bit of what it had and then add to it for people who don't know. I don't think it's going to make a difference, but I still think it's cool. You have a new thing. People will look at it and think, it's a new direction. They're doing something new. It's cool. What's this all about?
I mean, the reality is most people didn't care about the old school Bronco until the new Bronco was coming out. Like people just like the people who were into old school Broncos were into old school Broncos, but everyone else was just like, well, whatever. And it gives Volkswagen and Scott and that whole team over there the opportunity to go after Bronco, to go after Jeep, to go after Land Rover with an EV. Like we get to go after these companies that are making these off-road vehicles, and we're going to go after them with an EV and try to get there. I don't know if they're going to get there first. Who knows how long it's going to take to get the Bronco on an EV platform, or I'm sure they probably said something, but things are always moving now in our crazy supply chain world. But yeah, I think, Volkswagen got a lot of, the ID Buzz became this huge big deal. And really the only people who cared about the ID Buzz for a long time were hippies and surfers.
Yeah.
And so, the microbuses were just like, and then all of a sudden they came out like, oh yeah, I remember, my pot smoking high school sophomore girlfriend had one of those, or something like that was a cool thing. Oh, I completely forgot about how cool some things were back in were in the day. I mean, those things were probably death traps, but everyone wants one now, and so it's it's gone from enthusiast vehicles of old into something that people really like, and I think the Bronco is really sort of shown that you can take an old enthusiast vehicle and make it into something crazy. And I think Volkswagen, if they don't mess it up, can do that with the Scout.
Okay, and one of the interesting things is that this is not just being established as another brand for VW Group, but actually as a separate company. It's a separate business unit that is wholly owned by Volkswagen, but is an independent company. So Scott's going to be running this company, and I'll be curious. I'm guessing that one of the things that they're going to do, since this is an EV only startup, technically a startup company with no dealer network, that they will not have franchise dealers when they launch. So they'll probably follow the Tesla model of having of having company-owned retail outlets that can focus just on off-road EVs.
Yeah, if you want someone who's going to spin up a company who knows a lot about automotive and the VWA, it's Scott.
Yeah, I mean, he's a marketer at heart. I mean, when I first
started at
encountered him, he was, and when I first met him when he was at Audi, he was head of marketing at Audi, and he's always been a marketer at heart. So, it'll be interesting to watch over the next several years. I think it's probably we're not gonna see Scout launch vehicles until about 2025 or 26. So he's got some time.
Yeah, it'll be. Yeah, I just remember I really liked the Scout. Those things. I don't remember how well it seemed like my friend was horrible at taking care of his car, and it kept running, but it was also the 80s and 90s. His dad probably fixed it for him.
Well, I mean, they were pretty simple vehicles. It didn't take much to keep them running.
That's good.
Yeah. All right, Mercedes again. You mentioned that you tried out Drive Pilot last year over in Germany, and sounds like they're getting ready to start launching it here in the U.S. By middle of next year. What do you think about Drive Pilot, Robbie? This is an L3 system that lets you not watch the road.
I've done 2 Drive Pilots at Emendingen. I did this one that we're talking about that's on.
What was it? Where did you do that again? I'm sorry. What was the name of the place? Okay, just checking.
And I've done one in L.A. The one in LA was with I wasn't behind the wheel. The ones in Germany, I was behind the wheel. It's a really smart, good system. You can actually have your hands off the wheel, and you can actually do other things on the and in the car, or read a book, or use your phone, and then it says, "Hey, oh, by the way, you need to take over," and it gives you time to take over. It is sensor-tastic. There's a lot of sensors on there. There's LiDAR. There's a sensor that tells you when it's raining. It's in the wheel well, and when it detects rain, it'll turn the system off because you're not allowed to use it in the rain. It has high definition like GPS. It has it uses all these different satellite systems to make sure you're exactly where you're supposed to be. There's a lot of tech in it. It's true level 3. And then at the end of the day, I cannot stop looking at the road. I've been in it.
Can't break the habit.
And the 2 times I was in Germany, it was they had they created freeway traffic on the track. So they had a big truck, they had an emergency vehicle, they had people cut in front of you, they had all these things that would happen that the car would have to react to. And it did all the things like it was supposed to. It didn't act weird. It didn't slam into anything, which means they trusted. And I was behind the wheel, so they're like, well, good luck. But at the end of the day, I was telling them, how hard is it for you to not look at the road? Because it flies in the face of everything that you do when you're behind the wheel, which is paying attention. And I think initially people will probably be fine, have difficulty, but then after about 2 months, they'll be like, oh yeah, on their phones and, playing Tetris I played Tetris in one. There's a browser. You can watch video. I watched a video of Drive Pilot inside the car doing Drive Pilot. But as soon as the system turns back on, it says, hey, you need to take over. All that shuts. You can't access it anymore. So if I'm driving and let's say an emergency vehicle comes up behind me, as soon as it recognizes that emergency vehicle, it tells you have to take over. And so anything you're doing on that screen goes back to the home screen. And it's like, hey, no, you gotta, and it has the little lights on the
You're back in charge
wheel,
now.
And yeah, it's very good at telling you what to do. And that said, I don't know how that's going to work with the U.S. with the U.S. laws, because it might you can deploy it in California and Nevada, which they'll probably be the first places that'll do it. But you still have a cell phone law. You can't have your cell phone in your hand. And what are you supposed to tell your car? Oh, by the way,
think about that.
My car is really fancy. I can use my phone, and the cops will be like, they're sneaking up on you with their little blazer.
That stealthy blazer's going to sneak up on
blazer.
you.
With his Thor hammer lights.
The Thor hammer lights. Oh my God, is that a Volvo? No. Oh God, no, it's a blazer.
It's a cop in a blazer.
Oh God, it's a Swedish cop. Oh no, wait, never mind. Yeah, so reading a book, like all these things that you're.
Well, there's no law against reading a book while you drive in California, right? Just not your phone.
You can't have anything. You're not supposed to have anything in your hands.
Hands
really.
free. It's a hand.
Supposed to be a
Yeah, your
hands-free
hands
thing.
have to be free. Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, so
But you could
can't
take
like
a sip
have
of your
things.
soda or something.
take-
You're
yeah.
taking your cheeseburger. Why? So where do you draw the line?
Yeah, that's-
Bobby?
Can you
So that's
get the Kindle app on the screen in the car in the Mercedes?
Maybe. I'm sure they'll
You could be
probably.
reading a book.
You can just watch movies, I guess, the whole time.
Because I know Mercedes has a deal with a supplier called Forcia that has an alternate Android app store called Aptoid that they're going to be integrating in their future cars. So maybe you can get the Kindle Android app running on the center screen in your car, so you can read while Drive Pilot is taking care of the work.
And if there's a web app for it, you can just load up the web. There's a browser, so you can just load
okay.
that.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
If you you can just do it in the browser.
You throw Zoom in the browser, do all these things. But yeah, it's this like what can you have your phone in your hand? Can you not have your phone in your hand? How do they determine whether or not like, oh, do I pull that gun? Oh wait, does he have a special Mercedes? You have to look for that little bulge in the back for that.
Oh my God, that would be
fancy Jeep.
stupidly complicated. Now that you say
Yeah.
this, you're totally 100% right. To make this work, the level of complication is going to be absurd.
Well, and this is one of the reasons why, back in 2018 when Audi launched the current generation A8, at the time that they announced it, they announced this traffic jam pilot system. And this was the A8 was the first one to be equipped with LiDAR. And it's actually the same LiDAR sensor, Vallejo Scala LiDAR sensor that Mercedes is using. And they were going to have the same kind of level 3 capability that you have with Drive Pilot. And they ultimately decided, no, we're not actually going to launch this because you've got different laws, you've got this patchwork of laws in all these different states, and we can't make it work everywhere. So screw it, we're just going to give up.
So now they have a UN rule
Right.
that it adheres to, but the two countries that don't adhere to that rule are the United States and China, which are two huge markets for Mercedes, for everyone really, but especially for Mercedes as a luxury brand. And so you're just like, okay, so now they have to figure out okay, in this state, and they have to geofence it, and it's if you, especially in LA, if you live in LA and you have to go 10 miles, that's going to take 3 hours,
Yeah.
and you're just sitting there in the car.
A 37-mile-an-hour speed limit on the 405 is no big deal. I mean, you'd never get there.
You'll never get there, yes.
Yeah, so it's you're just sitting there for a long time, and you could get work done, without putting others in danger and yourself in danger. It's just the sort of figuring I don't think you're going to be able to use your phone legally in these, just because the average Swedish cop in a Chevy Blazer is not. He's like, I thought it was a Volvo. Is not going to know that your car has level 3. You know what I mean? It's the hands-free thing. They're like, no one's pulling you over for that. Or we'd be getting people pulled over for Super Cruise all the time. But if you're if I'm just sitting there with my phone in my face, just
yeah, if you're just staring at it.
Well, the thing is, I mean, unless you're holding your hands up in the air, you got them, behind your head, with Super Cruise, you usually can't tell, if somebody's got their hands on the wheel, they might be on the bottom of the steering wheel.
Right, because people put their hand on the bottom of the wheel all the time, and you can't tell. Yeah.
Where are you supposed to put your hands anyway in this situation? When you're
where do
in
you,
Super Cruise, I just lay them on my lap, and they're right next to the wheel.
But it feels
That's what I
really
do,
weird.
too.
With just my hands in my lap, I feel
Or then
you're
you know what
standing
happens?
awkwardly in a photo. I don't know where to put my hands. It's just on my lap. Okay, I just set on my lap.
Once I'm done doing the testing on the curves that I know that are difficult and the areas that I know are difficult, my hands end up just back on the wheel because where else am I going to put them?
Where else are you going to put your
My
hands?
head, in my pockets. You're sitting down. What do you do? Just cross my arms.
Thinker. Yeah. What do you do with? Yeah.
So no, I think Mercedes-Benz is doing the right thing, being super careful and being super safe with this, testing it with actual engineers who know what they're doing as opposed to just randos. I know they were trying to get this in California by the end of this year, but I guess that's not everything takes longer than you think in
Yes, it does.
in this
Yes,
stuff.
it does.
So
All right. Nicole, when we were down in Plano
Yes.
back in June
For Nicole.
I feel singled out.
for the Toyota Palooza.
Toyota Palooza, yes.
At one point in there, they took us into a secret room in Toyota headquarters.
They put tape over our phones. No, they put them in little bags,
They
right?
sealed them up in little bags so we couldn't take pictures or record anything.
Mm-hmm.
And they showed us two cars, one of which we can talk about now.
Yes.
Yay.
The Toyota Crown coming back to
Crown.
America for the first time in 50 years.
Yes. So it's coming back, and nobody knows it was here anyway because 50 years ago, like nobody knows. Everybody's like, it's a brand new car. I'm like, well, only for us. Yeah. So the Crown is back. Okay, so I actually like how it looks. I like the Crown. I feel like when I look at the design of it, I like the design. Let me preface this by saying I like it, but I kind of feel like they took like a crossover, like the clay molds they show us, when they're like, and one of the guys just accidentally leaned on the back window and was like, whoops, and they were like, oh no, wait, let's leave it just like that. Like they just squinched it down just a little bit in the back, just a little squinch.
It's an interesting design.
It's an AMC Eagle. Let's just say.
AMC Eagle.
Everyone, Google AMC Eagle and tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, the four-door Eagle, or the hatchback Eagle.
Oh yeah, the hatchback.
Yeah.
Oh shoot, it does. I was like, I'm like, does it really? And I had to pull up a picture, and I've looked at the picture. Dang it! Now I'm always going to see Thor's hammer on the front of the Chevy, and I'm always going to see this as an AMC Eagle.
AMC
Dang
Eagle.
it all! No, but I do like how this looks. I like the little.
You can like it. I'm just saying what it looks like.
The bit on the side on the door, they have that like black trim piece. The one that they have on their media site is this bright red and it has like a black roof and a black hood.
And that's the one we saw in
And that's
June.
what we saw, yeah. And it has a little black insert on the side, like it's on the like right above the door sill on the outside of the car, a little black trim piece. I think it looks good.
I think I think the red and black, kind of the red on the sides and then the black over the top from the bumper all the way to the back is a cool look. And it's kind of a modern fastback sedan that's been lifted up like an eagle.
It's funny because people this two-tone situation that they have going on, which I really like, and it sounds like you like it too, Sam. People either love this or absolutely hate it. There's no in between.
Well, and you don't have to get the two-tone version.
No,
you can
you don't.
You can get it in solid colors too.
You can
That's
be
the thing
boring
is-
and get a solid color if that's what you must do, or you can get the two-tone because you're.
And if you're boring and have no sense of fun in your vehicle design, get a monochrome. Get a plain silver monochrome.
Yeah, just silver, nothing. Everything blends.
The EQS has a two-tone version that you can get, and people were just like sending me messages like, "Oh, that's hideous. Why would you make it two-tone?"
I
Like you can
like
get
it.
it. You can get it in one color.
Like how do you
No,
like?
it doesn't have to be the two-tone. It's not like look at the site. You can get it in, and there were in the video. There's the two-tone one, and then there were like single color ones. But I guess they just watched that first half of
They
the
just
video.
saw
They're
the
like,
two-tone.
the hell with it, and they threw their hands up in the air, and then they immediately sent me a text message saying, "What the f is going on over at Mercedes?"
I like the two-tone. Well, it's like when they have with so many cars where it's not like the hood and everything, but just the roof. Just having a roof that's a different color than the rest. I like how that looks on most cars too. I think the extra color just makes them look interesting.
Can you get different colors with the two-tone? Like, could you get like a blue and orange?
I think it's just black.
Yeah, I don't. They haven't given us all those details yet, so
All right.
we
Red
don't
and green.
know yet. But
I want a Christmas one.
I was going to say
and
you
then a
made the
blue and
Christmas
orange.
crown.
I would like the Christmas crown.
I'd like the Christmas crown, please.
Ding, 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 ding.
but do you really want to drive that in August or
Yes.
July? Okay.
Yes.
They're gonna, yes, I do. I bring Christmas spirit everywhere.
Yesterday I saw a Dayglow yellow Volkswagen Rabbit Cabriolet, and I was
Oh.
like, oh my god! I was gonna follow the person and tell them if they ever want to sell that car, this is my phone number. I've done that
And
to
then you
people
were-
before.
And then you're worried if I follow this person and they get out of their car and they think I'm a creeper, I'm going to get shot. So
I
maybe
don't follow
shouldn't.
them. Like if they're near me and we're in a parking lot, then I'll go up to them. Someone had an old M3, like I forget which one, but it was like kind of being taken care of. I'm like, oh, this
Yeah.
is the car. I'm like, I bet this guy wants to sell this car. And then this is when I was a car and driver. So I gave him my car and driver business card. I'm like, if you ever want to sell that car.
So you seem legit.
But the problem is that car and driver business card had my Hearst email address. So he's probably trying to sell it right now, and no one's
just
emailing
bouncing.
him back.
Just bouncing.
Or my old boss is getting it, and she's just like, oh, yeah.
She's like, I got me a car. Thanks, Robbie.
Well, Sharon's not there anymore, so.
No,
she's moved on.
it would have been, it's Laura Sky Brown who would have
okay.
gotten my email. I think. I don't know. It's probably dead now. It probably doesn't bounce to anyone now. It probably just bounces into oblivion.
Oblivion to nowhere.
One of the interesting details that they revealed is that I guess all the Crowns are going to be hybrids, but they've launched this new Hybrid Max system on the Platinum version of the Crown with a 2.4 liter turbo. Electric rear axle, but this will be the first Toyota hybrid or transverse mounted hybrid that uses a regular step ratio transmission, like a 6-speed automatic transmission, instead of the system that they've used since the first Prius, which is an electronic CVT. So you won't have that classic Prius motorboating effect when you're accelerating. It'll feel more like a Hyundai or Kia hybrid.
Max.
Which I think is neat. It'll be interesting to drive it.
Well, I mean, they do want to build that electric manual transmission over at Toyota. Remember they had that?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Remember when we talked about it and how it doesn't work unless there's some sort of failure, like it has to fail. I don't know, it was like months ago or years ago. I don't know. Time doesn't make any sense anymore.
Time is a blur.
Time is a blur.
Okay, let's see what else. Oh, back to charging again. The car I'm driving this week, which we'll talk about next time, is the Audi e-tron GT. But I wanted to run down the battery as much as I could because I wanted to go and use Electrify America to see if I could actually get 270 kilowatt charging. And coming back from a party yesterday, I stopped at my local EA station, pulled in there. The first 350 kilowatt charger I pulled up to says on there, charger unavailable. It was dead. Backed out, pulled over to the other 350 kilowatt charger, plugged it in, started talking to the guy that was in the F-150 Lightning, a couple stalls down, that was charging his truck. He had just gotten it about 3 weeks ago. I turned around and looked at the screen. After 10 minutes, it was the Audi was charging at a grand total of 5 kilowatts. Half of what I get from my charger at home.
My home charger does more than that.
Yeah, mine does 9.6. And I turned back around to the Lightning owner, and he was on a 150 kilowatt charger. His was only going at 150 kilowatts. Come on, Electrify America. At least for me, I've had pretty good success with your chargers in the last year, but I know a lot of other people that have had a lot of failures with EA chargers. This is just not acceptable.
Did they respond? Because you tweeted, you sent out a tweet with this. Did Electrify America respond?
Apparently they only respond when you say something nice about them. They don't respond when you're critical. And because I haven't heard anything yet.
Here's the thing: the last, I would say, 8 months to a year, Electrify America seemed to have gotten it together. I was going to stay, I wasn't having issues. Every once in a while, one would be down. Mostly the issues I was having was that the credit card readers were just dead. Credit card reader would break or whatever. But then in the last month and a half, 2 months, everyone's having issues with Electrify America. I don't know. Are they updating everything right now and it's just not going going? What's going on?
I have no idea what the problem is, but it felt not a good situation.
Did it feel like they seem to be getting it together? They're okay, it's not 100%, but they're doing better.
Well, at least here, around Michigan and Illinois, and Ohio, they seem to be doing okay. I know in the Northeast they were still having a lot of problems. John Volker, he lives in New York. He was still having a lot of issues. Jonathan Gitlin's been complaining about
Gitlin's
EA
having
chargers.
A lot of problems.
So on the East Coast, they're definitely having a lot of problems. When I was in California last week, I didn't use an EA charger because I wasn't really in the mood to shop at Walmart. so I used an EVgo next to a Whole Foods, but that one worked fine, and I've generally had more success with the other chargers. Although I know other people have had issues with EVgo and ChargePoint as well. So
I had the one when I was road tripping. The one charge point, it had like 2 plugs that you could one charging station, but 2 little things you could plug in. One worked, one didn't, and I tweeted it. I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to charge my vehicle. And they responded. They immediately responded and said, even though I was complaining, I was like, hey, where was it? Can you tell us exactly what happened? Can you DM us? Like, what happened? Did it not play? Like, what was it? How was it broken? Did it, what didn't work? And they said, okay, great. We have a call tag in. We're going to go take it. Like, so I don't know if they ever fixed it because it's obviously not near me. But they responded to my, you guys, this is broken.
Guys, I think
with trying to fix it. I'm like, which is, okay, cool. You responded when I complained about it. So points to them that they did respond when I complained.
I'm wondering if we need to just move to the almost the gas station model with chargers, where there's a person there who says, I feel bad for this. I feel bad for this person because they're going to have to. But this person can also be like, oh, hold on. I can go back and I can hit a big red button and restart it. And it's
Or sometimes when it's these small mechanical things, like literally this clip doesn't work. Hold on a second. Bloop, 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 bloop.
Bloop, bloop, bloop,
Now it
bloop,
works. Yeah. Like they can fix stuff without having it to be like, I got to call a guy and the guy is 8 hours away. They can fix this.
Yeah.
You know?
And they did beef jerky and Slurpees and the whole thing. 7-Eleven, get on this.
If you've got to hang around for anywhere from 15 minutes to 45 minutes anyway for a fast charge, you want something there. Something besides just a grocery store that you may or may not want to shop at.
Sonic. Come on, Sonic. Yeah. You can have car hops.
EA did show a few months ago. They put out a release with some renderings, of their new charging station design that will include, like a convenience store, a restaurant, that sort of thing, like a gas station. And they're going to start rolling some of those out. And Tesla has been doing that. I know some of their supercharger stations have some of those amenities now. And that's something that they're going to have to do. The other thing is, if any of these companies want any of the money from the infrastructure bill, they've got to guarantee like 99.5% uptime and minimum performance requirements for their chargers. And it'll be interesting to see how they enforce that. Once they get the money to install, if they don't keep it up, or is the government going to start clawing some of that money back? I don't know.
Is it released like monthly? You got to get your stuff together.
Yeah.
Get it together.
Put it in escrow.
I know it's hard. I know it's hard to deal with all these different cars, but at the end of the day, Volkswagen was sort of forced into this, but
yeah,
if you're taking the responsibility of being like the largest network or trying to be the largest DC fast charging network in America, you got to take the responsibility. It can't just be like, well, we put them all out. Well, they also have to work.
Yeah. They have to actually function, or it doesn't
5
count.
kilowatts is. I have that Genesis right now, and I'm debating whether I'll take it today or tomorrow to test the 350 chargers that are on the other side of the bay, because even though there's EA stations and EVgo stations all around me, none of them are 350s. I have to go to the other side of the bay to do it, and so I might do that today. And if I get all the way over there and it's not working,
you're going to be ticked off.
There's going to be such a tweet. Like an old man yelling at a cloud.
Yeah. All right, last EV story of the week. Ford made a big announcement on Thursday about finally adopting lithium iron phosphate batteries. They talked about this briefly last year. They mentioned when they did their big EV presentation last year that they were going to be looking at LFP batteries, particularly for the commercial vehicles. And for those not familiar with different battery chemistries, most of the EVs today are using nickel-rich chemistries, either nickel, manganese, cobalt, or for the GM Ultiums, it's nickel, manganese, cobalt, aluminum. Tesla uses nickel, cobalt, aluminum. But the nickel is the really expensive part in there, and that's what they use the most of. LFP, and it's also the thing that causes thermal runaways and fires when things go wrong. The LFP batteries are much more stable. They will charge thousands of times. You have the potential for batteries that'll last 1 million miles. They're about 30% cheaper than nickel wrench batteries. Actually, probably more than that now with the price of nickel having gone up. But they also have about 30% less energy density. So what Ford announced is a deal with CATL, the Chinese battery company. They're the biggest EV battery company in the world, to supply LFP batteries starting middle of 2023 that they're going to use for the standard range models of the Mach-E starting next summer, and then early 24 on the Lightning as well. So they'll have at least the same capacity as what you get with the current nickel batteries at a much lower cost. They'll be much more durable, and these are actually the same batteries that Tesla is using for the standard range versions of the Model 3 now. They're no longer using nickel batteries. They're using these CATL LFP batteries. And that's for the base model of those. And then Ford and CATL are also going to establish the first large-scale LFP cell production in North America by 2026 with a capacity of 40 gigawatt hours. So nickel is still going to be the predominant one. It's probably going to end up being about 2/3 of the market for the longer range vehicles. But at least for Ford, it's probably going to be about 1/3 of their sales are going to be these LFP batteries. Any thoughts?
They're going to last longer. And I still think this is where we get to a point where people realize that they don't need 300 miles, 400 miles for their daily car. Or if you have two cars, if you have a gas car and you have an EV, your EV doesn't need 400 miles.
Right.
Your EV doesn't need 300 miles. 250, anything above 220 is gold. You even if you do a long weekend of just like crazy stuff and you forget to charge overnight, you're still gonna be fine. Like I haven't plugged in that Genesis in like 4 days, and I had to go back and forth to the city twice because I forgot something. I went to the city on a Friday, and then I had to go to Oakland, and I've just been driving this thing around for, I don't know, a few days. Like real, like not like, oh, I'm only going 20 miles, like 40, 50 miles, and it's like, I'll charge it later.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't plug in the Audi for 3 days, and I drove to Detroit and back a couple of times to Bloomfield Hills and back, and there was still 30 miles of charge left on it. And it was doing fine, and that thing's, I think the EPA rating is 234 miles for that e-tron. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely if you've got 200 miles of range, you can definitely get plenty of range out of that.
Million-mile battery. These things are perfect for fleets. I mean, absolutely. Like any delivery vehicle, anything like that, where that thing's a delivery vehicle's maybe doing 100 miles in a day. And it's a lot of stop and go miles anyway, and the thing just has to be a workhorse. You're doing 100 miles every day. That's a lot of miles every year. I don't know.
Yeah,
Nice. It's a lot of miles.
It's a lot of miles.
People.
So
it's many
30,000 miles. Let's just say 30,000 miles a year. If you're doing 50,000 miles a year, like that car's gonna last for decades. Or at least the battery is. And you just throw in a new drive unit and it's good to go.
Well, I mean, drive units don't wear out.
In case, I don't know, maybe if you run over, I don't know.
I mean, unless you have a mechanical failure from something, they generally don't wear out.
Yeah, those things go forever.
Don't really wear out unless they overheat.
Yeah, I guess this tires. You just gotta get new tires. And
tires, wiper blades.
Tires, that's it. Tires,
light bulbs.
Occasionally the pads, because those don't wear out nearly as quick because you have regenerative braking.
Right, so you don't even need to hit the brakes as much.
Oh my God, are you telling me that EVs are better than gas vehicles at longevity?
They could be.
Don't be silly.
That's crazy talk. Just because there's less moving parts. Fewer moving parts. That's the word. Fewer, not less. Fewer.
Yeah.
I got all grammar.
Well,
you're all excited being able to pronounce the name of that one place in Germany that I've already forgotten. You forgot how to speak English.
Well, while we're talking EV durability, let's answer some questions from listeners. We got a few. So first up from Al Beck. Question about long-term EV purchase. Say the battery degrades to 50% capacity. Would it cut the range roughly from 250 to 125 miles? Yes. Is the answer there. If so, would the cost to charge the 50% capacity battery also be cut in half? Yes.
Yes.
Because you're only going to put half as much electricity into it. 'Cause that's all it's going to take. And it's basically like if you took your gas tank and you filled half of it with foam, so it can only hold half as much gas. That's all you're going to be able to put in there.
Yeah.
So, as an example, take a 60 kilowatt hour battery is 50% degradation, a reduction in battery efficiency. Example: 60 kilowatt hours going into the battery, same as new, but half usable power coming out. No, it's all it's going to absorb is half that capacity.
Yeah.
And so, it's 30 kilowatt hours in, 30 kilowatt hours out, roughly. It's actually a little bit more than that, but even with a brand new battery, there are some losses associated with charging,
Right.
Depending on the type of charger you use. When you're charging at 120 volts, you're going to have more losses because the chargers are less efficient. They're typically optimized for 240 volts. So you're going to have a little bit more. You're going to consume a little more power going in to get that 30 kilowatt hours. But that's a separate issue. That has nothing to do with the age of the battery.
That's a lot of math that you have to deal with, and heat
That's a
dissipation,
lot.
and physics,
Yes.
and don't worry about it. It's not enough for you to worry about. Is really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
It's like the 120 to 240. Like, it's just nerd stuff.
It's too much. It's too much.
So if it's the former, would fueling cost rise over time? No, your fueling cost won't rise over time, but you will be fueling more frequently.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
And 50% degradation. I think there was a concern that like, oh my god, batteries are degraded. Batteries last a lot longer than they anticipated.
yeah.
Even the
I was
original
actually-
Nissan Leaf, I think they've only gotten those down to like 60% almost for most people.
And that was
and
early.
those are worse than most because they're the only ones that are air cooled.
Yeah,
Everybody
they're-
else is using liquid cooling.
Yeah.
I was actually at a meeting with some folks from Cox Automotive a couple of days ago, and they've made some investments. They bought a battery recycling company, and they also bought another company that's developed systems for testing batteries. Because one of the things Cox does, they own Mannheim Auctions, and so they do a lot of processing and refurbishing of the vehicles that are going, the used vehicles that are coming either as lease returns or used trade-ins going to auction, and they wanted to be able to properly value used EVs, and so they've made some investments to develop some testing methodologies to evaluate the condition of batteries on used EVs. And one of the things they found from their data is, aside from the Leaf, because of its air-cooled battery, pretty much every other EV is holding up way better than was anticipated 8-10 years ago. So they're generally retaining at 10 years, they're almost always still have well over 80% of their original capacity.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So, for the context for Al, thinking about buying an EV, we tend to keep our cars for 10 plus years. Am I crazy thinking about a Nissan Leaf or a Kona EV? The Leaf maybe, but the Kona definitely not. You'll be fine if you want to keep a Kona EV for 10 years.
I think the Leaf is fine. It's just really boring.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the other thing I would add, to the Leaf is, it depends. I would say it probably depends on where you live. If you live somewhere like in the Southwest where it gets really, really hot, then you probably want to stay away from the Leaf. If you live like in Nevada or Arizona. If you live somewhere more where temperatures are more temperate, then the Leaf should be fine.
Yeah, the Kona I really like our Kona EV, and the only reason we're leasing it, and it's really just because of what I do, and I want to have the next best thing in 3 or 4 years. Battery technology is going to advance, but it's even in 10 years, if you're just cruising around town, you're going to be fine. Yeah, it's like having the Kona, we've had it for 10 months now. And there's never been a time where I was like, oh, I wish it charged faster, or oh, I wish it did this. We never take it to the charger. It's always just charging at home. We just cruise around. We go, my wife has done a couple of road trips in it, and she's gone to Walmart and gotten done some
the Walmart run.
Done the Walmart run on her way there or on her way back, and No, it's like if we had this car for 10 years, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine. But I also want an Ioniq 5, and now I want an ID Buzz, and now I want
all the other things.
So yeah, that's just me. If you're a big car person, like car people tend to like switch cars pretty often. They'll pick one good car that they'll keep forever, but then everything else is like, oh, I want to try this now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that Audi, I plugged it in last night with 8% charge in the battery, and I plugged it in about 9:30 last night. And this morning at 7 o'clock when I went out to walk the dog, it was fully charged, and that's a 92 kilowatt hour battery in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can definitely charge, do a full charge overnight, and the vast majority of the time you're only going to be doing a partial charge. So.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, it's nice though because every day you walk out and your car's full. Which is not something I'll get into my BRZ and I'm like, oh, how much gas is in this thing? I'm like, oh, where am I going? Okay, I'm going all the way to San Jose. Do I have enough gas? And I won't know until I get into the BRZ because it's, it doesn't have any fancy like check stuff or app. Yeah. It doesn't have anything like that. So I'll get in and I'm like, oh, cool, I'm cool. I can drive all the way to San Jose.
Don't have to stop at a gas station.
I don't have to stop.
Yeah. All right. Adam J asks, if my old car is out of warranty and the alternator dies, it's on me to fix it. Now, so many cars have so much software, I'm wondering how that will work when my car is out of warranty, but some glitch causes features to break. Will that still be wear and tear and on me to fix? It depends.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know. The honest answer is we don't know yet how manufacturers are going to handle, long-term, software fixes. Because nobody's, aside from Tesla's, nobody's been doing it long enough. And usually, if they push out a software update that breaks something, they'll usually turn around and fix that, and push out another software update. But it was funny. A few days ago, I was listening to, there's a podcast I listened to called Historic Racing News. And they were talking about it's out of the UK, and they were talking about historic racing, old race cars, and trying to keep like Formula One cars and endurance racing cars, from the 1980s and 1990s running, so they can still use these things on the track, and they're having a harder and harder time with some of these cars. Like one example, the Williams FW14B from 1992. So this is a 30-year-old Formula One car. When it came out, it was the most advanced car in the world, most advanced race car in the world, full active suspension and everything, just completely dominated the 92 season. And recently at the British Grand Prix, Sebastian Vettel, who now owns the car that Nigel Mansell won the championship with that year, did some demonstration runs with it. And one of the things they talked about is that they actually had to take the active suspension system out of this car and revert it back to a conventional spring and damper passive suspension system because they could not get the software and everything, the computers working to make it run with the active suspension system. This is a problem with a lot of these older cars. There's some people that specialize in maintaining these older race cars. That one of the things they also do is they collect old computers, so they can use the computers of the same era with the same software to plug them in and just to get the engine started. Just to fire it up.
Because you don't have the interface anymore. Like if you ever try to plug into an old like Apple, like let's say printer with a new MacBook, it won't work.
It doesn't. It does not operate. It's like no.
Yeah.
Nope.
So you have to have the old Apple computer, and then you have to have the old OS, and then you have to have the old
like the McLaren F1, another example. When they designed that thing, a lot of the stuff they did was with compact laptop computers of the early 90s. I had one of those for my job back then, and McLaren technicians still have to keep a stockpile of these 30-year-old compact laptops just so they can service and just to do diagnostics on these things when they come into the shop. Yeah. So the reality is I think it's going to be better because these new vehicles are going to be able to do over-the-air updates. So they'll be able to push out software updates. So they won't necessarily have to directly connect in a lot of cases. But yeah, it's going to be a challenge, as software ages. It's like, what can you actually get fixed? What can you, what are you still going to be able to use 20 or 30 years from now?
Yeah, how long are you going to keep that old stuff and say, we'll
Yeah.
fix it? When do you just say, nope, done? There has
Yeah.
to be a point.
At some point, they have to preserve. They essentially preserve the OS in amber. It just sort of stops getting updated, and they have this is what it is now. Your car no longer evolves, which is
Right. This is where it stops. And
Yeah,
other new
it's like
things could come out, but not for your car. Your car
but
is
not for
here.
your car.
It stays here. Yeah.
And at that point, where there's going to be issues is with there's security
Yeah.
issues. If someone figures out how to hack that, that software that's in that old car. So
But how old do you think that old car is going to be? Is it getting old enough now that you've got just such an old car that, like, suck it up, Buttercup, you have a really old car?
I mean, if you look right now, there's that Honda, the relay issue, which and Honda's like, we're not going to fix that.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah, so
I've got a 32-year-old car in my garage.
Yeah, so it's it's on it's on these automakers. They're gonna have to look at it and say, okay, well, we sold 150,000 of these cars. We have to make sure that at least one person on staff, and then you have to train people with all these
One person knows.
Yeah,
There's
or
a
two-
guy.
well, I guess
We've
three
got
people.
a guy. Literally, there is a guy.
Yeah, and it's
Well, it's like Y2K. When
Oh
they
my God.
they realized in the late '90s that there was a lot of code that was written with the year with just two digits.
Right.
For the last 2 digits, and they didn't think about what happens in the year 2000.
Yeah.
And they had to find people that still knew how to write COBOL, and to go through
COBOL.
pour through all this code and figure out what needed to be fixed.
So there's always going to be like a class of people
Yeah.
who okay, we're going to teach you how to use this really old operating system because this is happening. So, I mean, the automakers are hiring more and more and more and more software engineers because there's so much that has to be done, and they need these people more so than they've ever in the past, because even with the gas cars, there's so much going on software wise that these people they have to have. So you have a much larger pool of people to pull from when things go weird 15 years from now.
Yeah. All right. Final question from Rich. This is really more of a comment, I think, from Richard DiCarlo. And to preface this, there was some reports that came out earlier this week that Ford was planning some massive layoffs from their Ford Blue division, which is the internal combustion business unit after they did their reorganization this spring. Said Ford, in its infinite wisdom, decided to permanently cut 8,000 jobs this week in an announcement to workers. So first off, Ford hasn't announced anything to workers yet. There's reports that they may lay off up to 8,000, but they haven't announced anything yet. So there's that. The reasoning behind the cuts is due to the transition from gas-powered vehicles to electric. Our current government is pushing electric vehicles, saying that it will create new jobs. Here's a perfect example of the lies that they're telling us. It's not like they were offered to go work at a different plant to produce electric cars. They were just told that jobs are permanently eliminated. Once you start peeling back the onion, you start to see that this is all about dollars and cents and not about saving the environment. So, first of all,
That's a lot to unpack right there, Sam.
yeah. So
That's a lot.
I'll start with this.
For the
besides
last
fact that they
question,
haven't-
you saved this? Okay, go ahead.
They haven't announced anything yet to employees. This is all speculation, rumor.
Yes.
And given who some of the people that reported this, I think that they got some hints from some reliable sources within Ford that there are definitely cuts coming, and this was to be expected. The other thing to keep in mind is that these are all cuts to salaried staff. None of this is hourly staff. None of this is people working in factories. This is all from design, engineering, marketing, other parts of the organization. Now, if they do cut 8,000 people, that's actually like almost a third of their salaried staff. I have a hard time believing that they're going to be able to cut 8,000 salaried staff and still be able to function.
I mean, like, I'm agree with you. Like, I get it. You know, you downsize, things change. It's like, oh, we have goofed and we have a third too many people.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. I mean, and so, yeah, I guess I have no problem believing they'd be laying people off. I mean, companies do it all the time, but I don't necessarily think that it's like, this is all because of electric vehicles and they're evil and they're really just going to fire everyone. Companies lay people off and hire people and shift and create new divisions and take for it. It's a constantly flux thing. I don't think you can really,
especially in the automotive industry is so volatile. I mean, it's you know, it's a lot of it's stuck to how the economy's doing. A lot of people are concerned about a recession. I mean, Tesla preemptively, I mean, they just started laying tons of salary people off. My friend got laid off at Tesla. He works in service, which is like maybe not the people you should be laying off at Tesla.
Yes.
But so but you know, people have been laid off from, and factories have been shut down way before EVs in the automotive industry. Like, you just like there's a whole documentary called about Flint, Michigan. You know, it's just the automotive industry is it's fickle, it's weird, and it's really like if humans are not buying cars, then they cannot sell. You know, there's no point in them making more cars because the humans do not have the money to buy cars at this point in time.
It's an industry that is, and really any industry, most of them have layoffs and have a cyclical thing. And as the economy changes and as people's habits change, but it doesn't, you know, I just think like offering up the sacrificial lamb of EVs, damn them to hell, they've laid off all these people. I don't necessarily think that's what's happening. I think this is probably assuming that Ford comes out with something and says something about this. There's going to be more to it than just, we just axed 8,000 people. Didn't need them. Like, there's going to be a little bit more to this, you know?
Plus, they have to hire again, like, just go back to the last question about, you know, software. I mean, they've hired so many software people. They have all the, and then we have to talk about autonomy, but like software, battery specialists, and people, you know, they have to build a whole other factory just for batteries. I mean, that's a whole lot of jobs that Ford didn't have those jobs before because Ford doesn't make oil into gasoline like Chevron and Exxon. Now Ford has to essentially make the thing.
Make their gasoline now.
Yeah, you're almost making your gasoline for it. So it's
Yeah,
I mean, Ford is, you know, they've already announced 3 battery plants that they're building, plus a new assembly plant in Tennessee. All of those are hiring, you know, combined, I think more than 8,000 people. Plus, you know, this week's announcement of the LFP plant, which is going to be probably another 1,000 to 1,500 people. So, you know, and the software engineers, you know, they've hired, you know, between the manufacturers, they've hired many thousands of software engineers over the last 3 years, and they're actively recruiting for more software engineers. You know, I think, you know, where you're going to see people leaving Ford, you know, is people who've been designing engines and transmissions and other components that you don't need in EVs. So there is a shift, but you know, the people that are going, you know, they don't have the expertise and the skills to design. You know, you're talking about mechanical engineers as opposed to electrical and electronic engineers and software engineers that you need for EVs. So it's a very different skill set, and you can't just retrain those people necessarily.
Yeah. And when I talk to automakers, oh, sorry, go on.
No, it's more than just like they've laid people off. You know, it's the nature of humans, of development, of civilization, that as things change and they move, what was a very, you know, a position that they needed lots and lots of 10 years ago, suddenly you don't need lots and lots of, but you have some other type of job that needs to be done. So there's always, especially in large industries, you know, the automotive industry is a huge animal. There are so many parts to it. There's factories, there's offices, there's development, there's trying to do EV stuff now. People are going to, you know, the market's going to shift where they're going to have to lay off people from one place, and maybe they've hired more or the same as in another spot, but it's just kind of, that's civilization. Like, the businesses change, industries change. I don't see this as like, oh, the EVs have crushed everybody. I think that's the only thing that's freaking me out about this question. I'm like, it's not like Ford's infinite wisdom. Well, it probably is wise. I would rather see them lay off people as they need to lay off people, even if it was me working at Ford, than be like, bye, we laid no one off, we're done. Like, you sometimes have to make business decisions that are unfortunate. So
there's not a lot of carburetor designers left at any of these automakers. I mean, things, the catalytic converter people, like one day they had a job.
And now,
Like, hey, yeah, it's. I mean, vehicles have been advancing, and it's just now they're advancing much quicker than they were before, and carburetors. Once the fuel injection, there's a bunch of people who probably worked carburetors, and they're like, I don't want to learn how to do fuel injectors, and they left. And I've talked to automakers. I'm like, what does your team feel about this? And they're like, there's a lot of people who are very excited, and they're learning, and they're doing all the things that make sure that they're ready for the future. And then there's some who are just like, you know what, I've been here for X amount of years. I'm just gonna I'm going to ride through until my retirement. And then, as I retire, the job I do anyway is not going to be of much use anyway. So it's just sort of like cruising till the end. And it's always unfortunate when people get laid off. I mean, it's
yeah. I mean, it sucks to lose your job, especially if you've been doing it for
I've
20
been
or
laid
30
off.
years.
I'm in
Yeah.
media.
No, I mean, it doesn't negate the human price of change, but the change is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy for everyone.
No, we can stop it. We can stop the change.
Stop all the change. No change. No
We'll
more
just
change.
stay
None.
at that spot.
Zero. So
We can turn it back to 1850.
So, 18.
It's not too late.
I drove.
All right.
Yeah.
On that note, let's say goodbye for this week.
Goodbye for this week.
goodbye for this week.
Bye.